Yes, I finally done it. I think the camera's a bit rubbish on this, to be honest, because it's the one that's built in to the laptop. So it might not be great, and it is dark. So we'll just make the most of it. I've just had the last half an hour, the most strangest, weird things going on here, which is so funny. So, long story short, I met this couple on the park a couple of weeks back, and they're really sweet. And they've just gone home. And yesterday she said, "Can I take your phone number and keep in touch?" And I said, "Yeah, go on then." So I gave her my phone number. And then about 5 o'clock, she phoned me, but I was already on the phone with somebody else. So I couldn't get the phone. So I thought, "Who's this?" Because she hasn't texted me her number, and so I didn't know who it was. So I just left it, and then about 10 minutes later, she phoned again, and this time I answered the call, but as soon as I answered the call, she put the phone down. So I thought, "Right, okay." 5 minutes after that, she phoned again, so I answered the phone, and she was talking, but she wasn't talking to me, she was talking to her husband, and I thought, "You can tell when you get to a certain age, you just can't be let out." And then I could hear the conversation, so I'm going, "Hello, hello," and then she ended up, putting the phone down on me again. "Hello there, oh, I can't pronounce your name, sorry." "From the Isle of Man, oh, nice. Um, I think I know somebody from there. What's the name on Facebook? Lynn?" Oh, you wouldn't know her, but yeah, hi there. I'm just chunnering again. It's if it's Welsh, I'll never pronounce it. Because I'm up in Scotland and I can't pronounce the things up here, and Welsh is even worse. We had a Welsh warden here a couple of years ago, and he was lovely, but oh my gosh, some of the words I'm like, hmm. And it was talking about where he lived, and it is that long word. Like, don't even you couldn't even spell it, let alone say it. But yeah, I'm doing a live thing. I'm just telling everybody because they might watch it later about this woman like me who's been trying to phone me for the last half an hour, and she can't actually answer the call. And I've tried phoning her back, and she keeps putting the phone down on me. And then she sent me a voice message, and I was going to play it, and I thought I better not. And she's left this voice message, and basically it's her talking to her husband. She's not even answering the phone. So when you get to this age, you start going a bit weird or weirder. Do you say Alwyn? Is that how you pronounce it? Alwyn? I wouldn't even know. Alwyn Mar. Yeah, I can't say it. Isle of Man. Hi, Fee. You all right? We're just having a laugh. Alwyn. Oh, yes, that's nice. Alwyn. Fee, can you pronounce it? Because we're from Yorkshire. Alwyn. Alwyn. There's a few names that sound different typed than pronounced. I'm glad I've got an easy one. That's what I'm like for. There was some people up here, these Scottish people, and I can't even pronounce it. There was one EUOGHAN. When sounds like the word when. All when. Oh, nice. Hey, Christine. So you're all catching me in the middle of chunnering because that's all I do. I just chunner all the time. I've told everyone to stay away from me because I'm doing a live podcast. But when I say everyone, that means Steve next door. So no one else comes around. Now, all when all when has just got me to pronounce his first name. Try the surname. yeah. Pronounce that. Olwen is from the Isle of Man, but he's got a Welsh name. Where's everybody else from? I know Fiona's from Halifax. Where are you from, Christine? I am currently living in Auburn in Scotland. Do you know what? I've been on this park now for 5 years, and I've been doing my job for 5 years. Oh, Warrington, I've never been. I've heard of it, but I've never been there. Do you know, it's funny though, because I came to Scotland 10 years ago, and prior to that, I was living in England, in Halifax, but I couldn't drive until I was 42. So I never went travelling in the UK, apart from we'd go to the seaside, like Blackpool and Scarborough. So you're from Manchester, originally lived Isle of Man 6 years now. Oh, nice. I can't make out who you are then, Owen. So you've got a Welsh name, but you're from Manchester and you live now in Isle of Man. Oh, Liverpool and Manchester. Ah, I've been to Liverpool and Manchester, so yeah. Oh, nice. We used to go shopping in Manchester. Oh, that if we want stories, this is a funny story. So at Manchester, is it? I can't remember if it's the White Rose Centre. You know, the big shopping centre there. And this is going back many years ago. And I don't know if Fee will remember this story, but we went shopping with my nana and my auntie Susan, who had special needs, and my mum. And we went to the shopping mall. And my nana at the time had never been on an escalator ever. And we were on the second floor because we'd gone up in the lift. And my mum said, "Let's go back down the escalator." And my nana goes, "How do you do it?" And they said, you need to just put one foot on the top step, and then you hold on to the rails, and then you put your other foot onto the step, and then you just stand there and it takes you down. But my nana was going absolutely, I can't do it. She said, "What do you do?" So she made the mistake. She put her hand on the rail of the escalator, put one foot on the step, and then panicked and stayed there. Well, of course, it carried on moving. So what happened is she ended up doing the splits, and she was clinging onto the escalator. And she did these scissor splits. And by this point, we were at the bottom of the escalator, and me and my mum were holding on to each other, and we were screaming, laughing. And she kept saying, "Go and help your nana." And I couldn't. I just couldn't help her, and I couldn't stop laughing. And she came down the escalator and doing the splits, and her dress had come right up, and she had these big whack off bloomers on, and all you could hear was her screaming and that, and I were crying. And we ran into the toilets, me and my mum, and we were howling, laughing, absolutely howling. And my auntie Susan was crying, laughing, and all you could hear was my nana calling for help. And then my mum said, "We better go back outside because we're cruel. We need to go and rescue Nana." We goes back outside, and my nana was sat on a bench with the security guard. And when she saw us, she pointed at us and she said, "That's him there." And he looked at us with utter disgust. And the the more sympathy she got from people, the more we found it funny. And I don't know why I always laugh at that story. My poor nana, she'd have been in her 70s and she'd never been on an escalator in her life. But that's what our family's like. If something happens like that, I don't know why. I just find it really funny. And instead of trying to help her, we just ended up in toilets instead. But that's what we're like in our family. And do you know, every now and again I meet somebody like me and I think, "Oh God," and then I think, is that how I come across to people as well? Do people think I'm a bit nuts as well? But apparently so. Oh, Christine had an incident on an escalator. I bet everybody has at some point, you know. I think they're a nightmare. I've watched a few videos of people getting stuck on them and try to go the wrong way up on them and stuff. But yeah, we've got some funny stories in our family because we're all like, we shouldn't be let out. So, are you a crazy nomad, Alwyn? Are you do you live in a van? I've done this van now. I've been in this van for 2 years. The one prior, I was in for 3 years. The one prior to that, I did 1 year, and then I've done staff accommodation, and I've lived in a static caravan. I've lived in a cabin and flats. But do you know what? For the last 10 years, I've only lived in no, I had a flat in Halifax with Paul, and then I couldn't stand it there, and that was for a short while. And then when I came to Scotland 10 years ago, I lived on the Isle of Ling in the Bothy. That was lovely there. And then I had a house in Loch Goiled, and I got thrown out of there. All right, so you're the same as me then, Olwen. You've, yeah, I've done all that. So I actually consider this one the best way because this caravan is on a free pitch that comes with my job. So I don't have to pay rent and I don't have to worry about being on the road because what I found when I lived in my Father Ted, my little Father Ted caravan, I couldn't park anywhere because everybody thought I was a traveller, and they're actually really, really prejudiced. And I realised that you got treated better in a van than a caravan, and I think people associate caravans with the traveller community, and they see you as trouble. So I didn't like being on the road. If you've ever watched my old videos, go and watch the one where we went on an illegal camp, and that was funny. So we turned up at this place. I think it was Loch Etive in Scotland, and they had this gate with a lock on it with a code. And if you got through it, there was a little beach. And I was with my friend Paul, and he said, "Oh, I want to go there. I can put my tent on the grass by the beach, and you can put your caravan on." And I said, "Well, we can't get past the lock, and you're not allowed." And he went, "Well, I'll just have a go." So I says to Paul, "If you can get through that lock in 3 attempts, then I'll put my van on there then." So anyway, he did it in second attempt because I said, "I bet the first 2 digits of the code is 19." And because everybody always uses the birthday for locks or generally, and he got in it on the second attempt, and so we went through and we was on the beach. And to be fair, I picked up rubbish that was left there from other people. Oh, hello, Roxanne. Wow. She lives in a fifth wheel trailer in New Jersey, USA. Wow. They're the big ones that because we use the word caravan here that gets towed by a car, and we call them camper vans or motorhomes if they've got an engine. And the motorhomes can be quite big, but I've watched quite a lot of these American YouTubers, and from what I know, fifth is a fifth wheel trailer quite big. Everything's bigger there, to be fair, even cars. Yeah, I started watching the van life movement thing years ago, and I've forgotten the name of the guy. I bet it's great though, Roxanne. I love stuff like that. Some of them are absolutely stunning. Oh, what is it? You probably know the name of the guy I'm talking about. I can't remember his name. and he's in the US, and he does loads of interviews of other van lifers. What's he called now? Really nice guy, older guy. Yes, Bob Wells. Yeah, he's great, and he's interviewed loads and loads of people, and I've watched loads of them. That's one good Roxanne. That is good. Yeah, Bob Wells. I like him. He was the one who kind of introduced me to this lifestyle in Scotland because he was a really nice guy that decided he'd just had enough of the rat race, and he got himself, I'm going to call it an RV. I can't remember how we started off, and he just took to the road. And along the way, he's met a lot of people because obviously it's a community and you come across people all the time. And there's quite a lot of places in the States where you can go and hang out together. And do they call it boondocking or something? They do all these things together, and they'll have meetups. And he's met some great people, and a lot of people my age and older have started to do it. And quite a lot of them are living in vans now, and they're all for the same reason. They're just sick of it. They're sick of trying to hold on to houses and pay all the utilities and everything when you've got it, your relationships ended and stuff like that. And a lot of people are just tired of the system, and so they've just left it. And yeah, that's the one. Yep, the RV living. Yep, he's great. Him. But yeah, he was the one who made me feel safe to do it because there was a lot of women on their own doing it as well, and they're really strong people. And I suppose they were that way anyway. But doing this lifestyle, people have just got so much confidence to do it, and they've got the community as well, and they make friends with each other and support each other, and love his snag line. Yeah, I can't remember. Oh right, yeah. So boondocking is free, but you can only stay on public land for 2 weeks before you got to move on. Do you know they're getting tougher in the UK? I've been watching a few other van lifers, and quite a lot of them are saying that they're cutting back on it now, which is not a good thing. There's quite a lot of places here where you could used to park for free and stay overnight. And I've noticed in a lot of the forests around me as well, they've started putting stuff in there saying you can't stay overnight, and they're putting cameras in. And I'm going to admit something now, and I accidentally well, I don't know what happened, but it was something to do with a felt tip and a poster, but it said something about you have to park here, and my felt tip fell on it and it came off, and anyway we stayed for free. But I don't do ridiculous things. I am very much moral, not necessarily legal, because I think the law is a man-made construct to control other people. So if you're not harming nobody by sitting in a car park all night, then what does it matter? So do you know when I don't like saying the word because I always get a strike against me if I say the word. But 4 years ago when we all got told you can't go out and things like that, and because we're all gonna die, you remember that? And I remember I went to one of the local forests here, and bear in mind, you're talking a massive forest, and you've got a big car park, and when you go in, there's about 5, 6 tracks in there that lead off from each other. Chances of bumping into somebody, even in the middle of summer, even in high season, is not it's not that much really, because it's such a big place. But during that time, somebody went round and put loads of posters up saying please keep 6 feet distance and please stay at home and all that. And I'm like, what, in a forest? So I took all the posters down, and somebody on the local page put, somebody's going around vandalising all the posters in the forest and stuff, and it were me. I can admit it now, and I will admit it. And there was this guy. This is nuts. This is nuts. He went on a beach locally with his wife and 4 children, and they was having a picnic during that time. And there was nobody else there. There was only them on the beach. But the neighbours over the road phoned the police and said, can you come in and tell them, because they're not allowed outside. They've been there for more than an hour. And that just shows you how insane people went. And he actually got arrested. And they took him into the cells and kept him in overnight. And his wife was hysterical and his children was hysterical. And he went on to sue the police after. And I'm glad that he did it. But how ridiculous is this? We live in a place where we're told what we can and can't do. And I've always said, if I got the money to buy my own land, I'm going to tell you right now, no one's going to tell me what I'm doing on it. And I've already stated that George, the fire-breathing dragon, will be in charge of my land, and he will breathe real fire at anybody who tries to tell me what to do on it. So there'll be big, massive warning signs saying, keep away from here. Because I am absolutely... I cannot believe that anybody can live such a... in a ridiculous society like that, where you're told what to think and do and everything else. It is a society of self-policed. It is. And you know, and I didn't have any of those things either, because they was ridiculous. And do you know what I remember? This is funny story. During that time again, I went to Tesco, and one of the ladies at the door who was policing the door with all the staff said, you haven't got a mask on. And I said, guess what else I haven't got on? And I walked past her and went in, and they didn't notice my face. Because I went in and I had see-through leggings on and no knickers on, right? And I did it on purpose. And my friend Paul were howling, and he said, you're going to get arrested. You couldn't see the front part, you could only see the back, because I had like a coat thing at the front. But it was just, it distracted it distracted everyone so much. They were too busy looking at my backside to notice I didn't have note on my face. But I'm not playing the game. And then I used to play the game going down the arrows, and I was walking down there, and this is funny as well. And everybody's walking down like one way, and they're all looking around like, oh. So I just did Michael Jackson moonwalk on it. So if I got to the end of the aisle and I wanted to go back down it again, I just moonwalked backwards, and you should have seen them, because they couldn't do no. What can you do? And then I'd get to the checkout, and then right by the checkout, you've got the cafe. And I used to play games with them all, and like mind games, and I'd go, I can't say the words in case they take my channel down, but I used to say the word COVID to the left, and then COVID gone to the right, because if you went for a cup of tea, it disappeared as soon as you sat down. And how did people not say this is just insanity? And it was so bizarre. And I remember feeling really angry with it as well, because that's true, Fee. The mask, they came in handy when your teeth were crap. And I do remember, because do you remember when my denture thing snapped and I was a gummy bear, and that was the only time I wore it, and that was to go to the dentist, and that because I was embarrassed, and that was the only time. But yeah, it covered it up. So yeah, that it was good for stuff like that. But there's no way I was wearing one. It was absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, there was a girl there who worked on the checkouts at the time, and I actually used to get really insulted by this, because she she was one of these people who watch the TV and everything that the TV said is the truth. And so I was uneducated in her eyes and I didn't know what I was talking about. And everybody on the TV were telling her what to think. And I remember feeling so insulted that she was given perceived power over me and telling me what to do. Because she used to go insane. Like she couldn't serve me because I didn't have a thing on my face. So she'd get somebody else to come over, but she'd stand there with a sanitizer and try and spray me with it. And I'd tell her if that touches me, and then she'd sit there hyperventilating at me and stuff. And I felt kind of sorry for her. But then at the same time, I started to get angry because she was allowed to throw me out of the supermarket for not abiding by the law. And I remember standing on by the checkout and it had a line on the floor. And she looked over and saw that my toes were hanging over the line just by about half an inch. And she had a panic attack and phoned for the manager. And I thought, in any other time, you would have lost your job for harassing the customers. And now you're given a free rein. And because she got a free rein with it, because they all came and told me to step back behind the line, and I couldn't stop laughing. And I'm like, how does a virus know that black line? You know what I mean? It was just insane. And I had to have like stupid meetings with people about stupid rules that if you'd have shown everybody 10 years ago this, everybody would have laughed and said that's just a joke, that's a parody, right? But during this time, this insanity came about that became taken as like some kind of gospel. And if you didn't follow these ridiculous rules, then you were seen as insane. And I'd sit there thinking, how am I insane? And now all the people who've had all these things in their arms, they're all ill, all of them. And this park got shut down. It got shut down until they had to get a deep cleaning team in to come and put that smoke stuff into the showers and stuff, because a man phoned in and said, I've got a runny nose and I've tested positive. And I couldn't stop laughing. And when they used to come here, we used to have a right debate with people. And this is funny as well. And that's true. There is a lot with cancer. And anyway, this guy came here from Devon and he said, all the flipping tourists have gone down there on holiday and they've bought all the C word with them and they're all in our town and they're giving it to us. It's disgusting. They should be at home. And I went, hang on a minute. Where have you come from? And he went, Devon. And I went, you're in Scotland? And he went, yeah. And I said, well, why are you in Scotland? And he said, I've come to get away from them. And I couldn't stop laughing. I said, do you know what happened? I said, they're all going down the motorway, right, to get away from us. And you lot are coming up here to get away from them. And you've all crossed each other on the motorway and gone to each other's houses. And I couldn't stop laughing. And he stood there looking at me like my lights had gone out. And I said, do you not understand what I'm saying? How can you? It is absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? And then, oh gosh, there's too many stories of that. There was a story of the guy in Aldi, and he came over to me and he went, can you put a thing on your face, please? And I went, why? And he went, my wife's a nurse. And I said, I don't understand the logic to that. What does that mean? What has that got to do with me? And he went, she's putting her life at risk and people like you. And I went, putting her life at risk? I said, is she doing a TikTok dance? And he told me to get out. And I went, you can't throw me out for speaking. I said, but I'll tell you what I did during that time. I went to our local hospital, right? And the car park was empty and there was no one in it. And I did a little bit of research and discovered they use terminology and gaslighted everybody, because they'd say things like, the hospital is full of C cases and the ward's full. So people who didn't think outside the box or understand what they were saying must have thought that means the hospital is packed. But in the hospital where I am, they had one ward for the C patients, and the ward had 4 beds. 4. And they advertised it. They never said we've got 4 beds. They said the COVID. So I shouldn't have said that word. That means I'll get thrown off now. the that that ward is packed and stuff, but people were thinking that meant there was like 60, 70 people in the hospital. There was only 4, and they were over 80s. It was utterly ridiculous. So where I worked, kept asking if I'd taken the tea. It's funny, isn't it? But during that time, I was outcast on here and in the town and everywhere else. And if I hadn't have met my tribe online, I would have been really depressed during that time, because I felt like I just didn't belong in this world. And I don't feel I do anyway, to be fair, and I never have. But during that time, I felt really like alien, like I don't belong here. This isn't for me. And then I went on Facebook and I got loads and loads of friend requests from people like me. And it was amazing. And I started to talk to loads, and I got about 3,000 friends from around the world, and I collected them. And I collected them on purpose. And I said, can you tell me what it's like where you are? And we compared notes. So you've got Australia, the UK, America, US, all over. And we compared notes, and the insanity, some of them stories were absolutely insane. And I'm like, wow. But so many people like me didn't stand up and go along with it. We just bailed out and said, we're not doing this. So we just carried on living a normal life. Oh gosh, you're right about that as well. The care homes, did you see some of them stories? Absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, there were so many stories of that, of people having to go and stand outside and wave to their relatives through a window, and they weren't even allowed in the building. And yet the staff were allowed in, and they were allowed to go to work and be there all day, but you wasn't allowed to go and visit your own mother. How it was just insanity. And I really, really hope that we don't have to go through that again, because if it did come back, I hope that more people will stand up and say, I'm not playing this game. Because during that time, my mum got sick, and I remember it was at the time when they were closing the borders from England to Scotland. And I was talking to somebody, and they said, oh, you're not allowed to go to England. And I said, you're not going to stop me. And we came, it's like a 7-8 hour drive. And we drove through the border, and the roads and the motorways were completely empty. And because everyone was staying at home. And I thought, I'm not going to not go and visit my mom because of this. In normal times, you would go on a limb for someone that you loved, and you would be there, and you would sacrifice yourself for somebody else. But when somebody's telling you you're not allowed now, you're not allowed to go and visit somebody that's really sick, and I'm like, you're not going to stop me. So we went down, and we went past a few stationary police cars, and I did feel nervous, because I thought, if they pull me, I'm potentially going to get myself in trouble, because I'm not going to say I'll go home then, because it was horrible. And no one stopped me. Nothing happened. And we went. And when we came back, the relaxed the rules again. But I thought, what a horrible thing to do, to say you can't go and visit your own family. You can't be around people that you care about. You're not allowed to visit people. It's just ridiculous. But I can't, I don't know if it's built into some of us to be rebellious, or whether we've just waking up to the fact that we are being controlled and we just had enough of it. So I don't know which it is. And what I hoped is that if enough people said no to this, then it'd just fold straight away. And I think a lot of people were sort of in the middle with it all, and they were just scared. They weren't scared of the thing, they were scared of standing up, because when you do that, you get noticed, and it takes a lot to stand up, even for the smallest thing. And do you know, there were times when I'd go somewhere and I could feel myself getting anxiety just going to do a normal everyday thing, because I thought, what's going to be waiting for me when I get there? Because if they put a uniform on some people and say you're in charge and your job is to make sure that person complies, some people will go all out to do it. And I don't like confrontation, but I have got, also at the same time, I have got a belligerence in me as well. Like, there's a certain part of me that goes, I've had enough. Don't tell me what to do. That's true, Shane. There is loads of control, and fear still goes on with it. And this is why do you know what I would love more than out is for the TV network to go down, because on this where I am, they all sit and watch the news, and if a newscaster says this is happening and that's happening, then to them that is God's honest truth, and they can't accept that. They they just can't think outside the box. To them that is truth. So mainstream TV, yeah, I'm the same for you. Mainstream TV and stuff, I can't cope with it, because you can see it. And do you know, when you start waking up as well, seeing the truth, you start to watch stuff like, say, a science fiction film, and you think there's more truth in that than there is on the news and in the papers. And because they're telling you in the films what they're going to do. I've seen loads of films, like, and I thought, somewhere down in the future, I thought that was actually prophetic. That they were telling us. It's funny. Have you ever seen Black Mirror? Black Mirror's good. I watched all that, and yeah, it's true. All these far out films, and some of them you're watching it, and at the time you think, oh, that was a good film, but later on down the line you think that that's happening now. That is strange. So yeah, that's what I'm like. But anyway, you can maybe be getting that van and spot. All right. Oh yeah, yeah. That was, yeah. I'm going to do a tour of this van when it's summer, because I don't know if I did one of the decorating. I remember doing a tour of the van before I decorated it, but I don't know if I did one after. And I've just bought a little doggy playpen for doggies, and it's outside now, so they've got their own little garden now. Do you remember when I was in the tent? Oh my gosh. And I remember Paul dumping me then. That was horrible. And he said, I'm going to go and see my dad for a few days and see if I can get on internet. And he left me for 5 days and 5 nights in the tent in the forest. And I was absolutely terrified. And at night time, when the rain came and the wind, and you can hear the trees creaking, and you think that they could land on this tent. Now, what's funny is I've been back to that camp since then, because it's not far from here now. And the amount of trees that's fallen right exactly where we was in that tent. So I actually find it quite dangerous. But yeah, I remember being in that. Oh my gosh. It was, yeah. And talking about the fairies and fate, anybody who you consider to be, what, I don't know, what mainstream or normal or whatever, think you are insane, but they are real. They are absolutely real. And oh my gosh, I've got a story online about my encounters with the fairies, and it was a lady who's got her own website about it, and she said, can I tell your story on there? So it's on there somewhere. And in fact, I've got it on my computer somewhere. But yeah, they are very real. They are. And do you know what? I loved it. I absolutely love that. And oh yeah, that happened when I was living in the woods, in the forest, the first time. And when you tell a story, people think you're insane. But what does that mean anyway? Because anybody that doesn't think like you can be seen as an oddball or something. But definitely, I have seen them and I've heard them, but it wasn't just me. That's what made me more excited, because we was in a tent at the time and we was in a storm. There was only us in the forest, because it's not one of those sort of forests. It's near the sewage plant and everything else. No one goes there unless they're walking a dog during the day. And it's very, very steep and muddy, and there's no paths in there. So it's really wild. And it's not one of those managed forests like the other ones where they've put like path networks in. So this one is literally middle of nowhere, and it's just not one of those places anyone would go to. And we were in the tent and I was depressed because it was flipping February, and it was absolutely freezing cold, and the tent was broken. The zip on the front was broke, and it was pouring down with rain, and the water was pouring into the tent floor. So I was laying in water and I was crying like a baby, going, I can't cope. It was horrible. And because we were on a hill as well, if you came out of the tent and walked down to the car, it was literal mud bath, absolutely muddy. So, and pitch black, absolutely pitch black in the night time. So from like 4 o'clock onwards, it was pitch black. And we were sat in the tent and it was just horrific. And I thought, I can't stand it anymore. Then suddenly I heard two men. And I heard two men at the back of the tent, and they were talking, but they wasn't talking in English, or I couldn't make out any of the words, but you could hear them talking. And it just sounded like two guys having a normal conversation, but you could only go by the tone of the voice. And they just sounded like there were two men just having a normal everyday chat. And bear in mind, in the tent, there's me, two dogs, and there was Paul. And I got scared, and I thought, where have they come from? Because to get to that place also, you've got to go and park in the car park, which was down at the bottom of the hill. And I thought, what reason would anybody have to come into the forest in the dead of night just for a chat? But I was like a bit nervous. And then suddenly something came around the tent and hit it 3 times with a really heavy stick, like boom, boom, boom. Well, the dogs were going insane. They were barking and going mad. And my heart was in my mouth. And I turned around to Paul and I'm mouthing at him. I'm going, what help? What's going on? And he went like that. And he was smiling. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It was frightening. And then it just went silent. And then about a few minutes later, right up in the top, right at the very top of the forest, you could hear this very faint music drifting down from the top of the forest down towards us. And the music was like mesmerizing. And I was trying to figure out what it was, and I couldn't place the instruments. So I could say that it was a bit like a violin or a fiddle, but it wasn't a violin or a fiddle, if that makes sense. It was like something I'd never really heard. And then I heard a man's voice singing, and it was weird because, again, it wasn't in English and it wasn't a language I could like attach something to, because I've heard like Gaelic, I've heard that, and it was nothing like that. And I'm like, that's what is it? And so I heard this singing coming down through the top of the thing, and then you could hear all the other people singing, and then it got louder and it got louder and louder. So it was like someone's having a party now, and they're all having these. It just sounded like some kind of a celebration, like a party. And I got up to go out of the tent because it was almost like it was calling me. And Paul got hold of my arm and he said, don't go. And I said, something's going on up there. And it was drawing me. And he went, don't go. And I'm like, why? And he went, don't go, just stay. So I stayed. And I know even saying this, you're going to think I'm insane. And I don't care, right? But the music lasted all night. It went on for hours. And it was so beautiful. And then at one point I was sat there and I put my hand over my eyes. So my eyes were shut. And I was sat there facing the front of the tent. And like you can see things in your third eye. And it was like the faces were coming towards me like that. And they were literally like the Lord of the Flipping Rings. If you've ever seen or read the books, so you've got the trolls and the elves and all that, and they're all like what you'd call mythical creatures and people. But that's what I was seeing coming to me, and they all had expressions on the face, and one of them was right angry. He was like a troll, and he was coming at me like really aggressive, and I told him to off because I was really upset, and he looked like that, and then he went like that, and then he smiled at me. It was like, oh, I like you. You've got some guts there. But the other one came to me, and he was like this right gorgeous looking guy with black curly hair, and he looked like chuffing him off Lord of the Rings. What's that? Oh, what was he called? The one with black hair, little guy. I've forgotten his name, but it looked like him. But this is so weird. And then that all went away. And I was saying this to Paul, and I'm saying I can see him in my mind, what they look like and who they are. And he didn't say nothing. Then all of a sudden, the trees started whistling, but it wasn't Bilbo Baggins. It was the other one. Was it Lord of the Rings? Or am I thinking of something else? But small guy, really slim with black curly hair. I've forgotten his name. It'll come to me. But yeah, the trees started singing. It was like an orchestra in the forest. Oh my gosh. And I was mesmerized by this. And it was absolutely insane. It was like somebody had put on a show, like a concert just for us. And I have never heard music that beautiful in my life, but it was the wind whistling through the trees, but it did it in such a way that it sounded like an orchestra. And it was unbelievable. The dogs were just sat there like, it was amazing. But this part is the part where I knew for absolute certainty that this really happened, because the tent was open at the front and the zip was broken. This ball of light, and it was bright blue, came bouncing into the tent, and it was like a ball, like a bouncy ball, but it was going round in a very weird action around the tent, and the dogs went mental. Absolute. And I'm sat there like, wow, what the hell? And I turned around to Paul and went, wow. Then the ball bounced out of the tent and disappeared, and everything just stopped. And I sat there and I turned to Paul and I went, did that just happen? And he went, did what just happen? And I repeated it, and he went, yes, it did. And I said, what the hell? He said, congratulations, you've just met the fairies. Because he's seen them loads of times, and the dog saw them. And what is even more funny, it was a few weeks later, we ended up in a job not far from there on a caravan park. And I ended up in my Father Ted caravan at some point there. And I kid you not, 2 times something came to my tent, caravan, and hit it really hard, like boom, 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 3 times. And I knew it with them. And it happened again a few weeks later when I was in a different location, and it happened again. And there was only me on the park because it was winter and it was shut. But I knew it was them because it's like the calling card. Like if I get 3 bangs on my van, I go, it's the fairies. Honestly. And you do sound insane, and I don't care, but I have met them. And they also, another thing that they do is if you go into a big forest, they like to play with you, right? So what they do is they bend time. So you get lost. and you lose your sense of where you are in the forest. And no, I haven't seen the documentary called The Fairy Faith, but I should watch stuff like that because I love stuff like that. But yeah, definitely I've seen them. I've had a lot of other worldly encounters over my life with other things as well. And I do believe that, and I do not believe that it's just us and there's nobody else out there. I do honestly believe that we are multidimensional and we have other levels of existence. And if we all got in back in tune to who we really are, we'd see them. But because a lot of us have shut down, because we've been anesthetized by a lot of things, we're not able to connect with them and see them. But there are still psychic people who can see the other side, and definitely, yeah, opening third eye. Yeah, and UFOs definitely real as well. I've had my first encounter with a UFO was in 1981, I think, in Halifax, and we were coming back up the road from the Brownies, and there was my mum and her friend and a bunch of children, and we were walking up the road, and it's called Brow Bottom Lane, and it were facing up towards the moors, and to the right you've got the woods and the reservoir. So we were coming up and it was getting dusk, and my mum's friend went, "What's that?" And we looked up, and on the skyline of the moors you could see this saucer shaped thing, this craft. And we all just stopped and went, "Flipping heck." The little children were carried on playing around because they were only little, but I was at an age where I was more like with on their level sort of thing. So we all just stood there, and there was my mum and my friend, just her friend, just looking up, and my mum goes, "Oh, it's a plane." And it's like that, and then suddenly it goes shh, like that, and then shh, like that. And then she went, "No, it's not, because a plane can't do that." And then a friend said, "Maybe it's an helicopter," but then it went like that. But it was really sharp movements like that, and so fast. What else could it be? What Literally, what else could it be? So we were all stood there watching this thing, and it was crazy. This part is really nuts. Just saying this sounds nuts. We were stood watching it, and I sensed stuff, and I could sense them watching me, and I knew I was going to meet them, right? And that does sound insane. I know that. I put my hands up. I'm going to meet them. Well, what's funny about this story is when we told other people that night, they all laughed and went, "Oh yeah, here we go." But the next day in the Evening Courier, it was absolutely full of stories of the UFOs that had been seen on the moors. And the Pennine Moors go from like Halifax over towards Todmorden and towards Lancashire. And that's where they get seen a lot. And what had happened is on the other side of the moor at Todmorden, a policeman on duty called, I think he was called Geoffrey Godfrey, he witnessed it and saw something and had an encounter with them. And he put in a report, and he got ridiculed for it, but it was all over the papers. So we all saw it. And it wasn't just us that saw it. It was a lot of people, and there was a lot of reports to the police. So it was actually a really big event, a big thing that happened. And it would have been, I'd have been about 10, 11 at the time. Then when I was 16, they came to me. And that is when everyone thought I was a nut job, and I got put away for this. And it's a massive story. Flipping heck. It's true. You know, you say you've had UFO experiences. I honestly, it's true. People think you're nuts, but you're not. That the things that have happened. So when I was 16, I had the encounters with what you call the shadow people. Oh my gosh. And I'll never forget how traumatized I was. And it always happened at like 3:15 in the morning. And in my bedroom, my bed was facing towards the door, which was in like an alcove. And every flipping night, it was horrible. You'd see this like black ink spot appearing above the door, and then it had spread out like ink, like black ink, and then it had come spread out, and then these things like glided down towards me, and they were jet black, and they were all like monks. They all had like cloaks on, so I couldn't see any features in them at all. They were just black. And I was so paralyzed with fear that I couldn't move. But I would just lay on my back really stiff, and I couldn't even scream. It was like everything got stuck there. It was absolutely terrifying, and all I remember is them chanting, and it sounded like a monotonous, like very deep, unnatural, unhuman sound, very deep, and they were saying something, but I didn't know what they were saying. And then I'd just black out. And then when I came round, they'd gone. And I remember telling my mum and dad, and of course people think you're crazy, but they didn't make fun of me they just went, oh, you know. But I remember my dad going, you're just having nightmares. There's something, that's all it is. And then one day my mum said, what happened last night? About 3:15. And I said, those things came again. And she said, your dad went to the toilet in the night, and as he was going past your bedroom door, he saw a very, very bright white light underneath your door, like really bright. Like your whole room was lit up, and he was shocked, and he thought, what is that? And I said, it was them. They come for me. And long story short, this happened night after night, and I became so terrified I just couldn't take anymore, and I ended up cracking up with it because I couldn't go to sleep. And I remember going to school, and the headmistress said, what's wrong? There's something's not right at home. What's happening? And I said, you would never believe me if I told you. But I don't know who she spoke to and what happened. I just remember a doctor coming. And then I remember them saying, you need to go and have a little rest in hospital. And they took me to a psychiatric hospital, right? Now, this is very, very interesting, this story. So I was in there, and all they did, they took me into a room where the psychiatrist was, and he said, can you please tell me what you saw? So I told him what had been happening and what I'd seen. And he went, you've got sleep paralysis. And I went, right. And he said, but because you're not sleeping, I'm going to knock you out. So they put me in a room on my own, and then they just fed me sleeping tablets. So I slept constantly all the time. That's all I did. And then they'd wake me up after so many hours and make me eat and go to the bathroom. And then they'd give me more tablets. So that's all it was for a full week of just taking tablets. And I'm like, right. And then when it came to the end of the week, I was told to go down to the art room, and this is quite scary actually. So this is a psychiatric hospital. I was 16 years old. I was really mousy back then, and very quiet, and like nervy, like I was scared of a lot of stuff at that age. And they'd put me in this ward, and there was only me and one lady in there at the time, and she was a lovely person. And she was in there because she'd had a breakdown because of domestic violence. And so she'd admitted herself there to have a break from her husband. And it was awful. And then you'd go outside of the room, and then you've got like a waiting room type thing, a waiting room, like a kind of a lounge, but it was almost like in the corridor. And just off to there, they had the padded cell. And there was always someone getting thrown in there. And you could just sort of see them in there, but you couldn't hear them. And that's where they put them to calm down. But I remember going down in the lift to the art room, and the door under the lift was just about to close, and this young guy jumped in with me. And he went, where you going? And I said, I'm going down to the ground floor. And he just lunged at me. And I just felt absolutely sick, and I just froze. But just as he lunged at me, the doors flew open and these 3 doctors flew at him and grabbed him and pulled him out. And it turned out that he was a rapist and he was in there getting evaluated and he was allowed to walk around where all women was. Absolutely insane. And you call that place safe, right? But anyway, I went down to the art room and she made me draw something. She said, just what do you want to draw? Draw anything you want. But I'm not as stupid as I look as well. And I knew there was evaluating me. And I knew if I drew something dark and modelling, then they'd be going, oh, she's a bit, she's crackers and stuff like that. So I just drew something really nice, like an house with a sunshine and that. And she went, oh, that's nice. And then the next day I was sent to the psychiatrist again. And he said, can you tell me what you've been experiencing? And I said, nothing this week because I've been knocked out. And he said, can you just describe what happened to you before you came here? So I told him about the shadow people. And he just looked at me and put his pen down and he stared at me and he went, you never said that. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you never said that. There is no shadow people, is there? And I said, no. And he went, so what happened to you then? And I said, I had a nightmare. He said, correct. You had a nightmare, didn't you? Right, you can go home then. So I got sent home. Now, this is bizarre because I didn't know what was going on around me at the time because I was kept from stuff. But it turns out that the vicar, who'd only just started in the parish where I lived, he had been called out to 13 other families at the same time, all of them experiencing otherworldly encounters and paranormal activity. And because it was such a shameful thing to talk about, because people just laugh at you. People will just laugh and laugh at you if you say that. Trish and Dan. So because people just laugh at you for having otherworldly encounters, you don't talk about it to nobody. So none of these families were telling each other what was going on, but only the vicar knew. And it was so bad that they had to get the Bishop of Wakefield involved and a team of people. And it went on. It was like a spate of paranormal activity going on in this area, this one area. And then suddenly it just stopped. And it didn't just stop for me, it stopped for them as well. And it just went dead. And I'm like, but I only found that out after. Now we're going to go forward 20 years. I was doing a radio show with a guy called Russ Kellett, and he's a UFO researcher and paranormal investigator. And he'd had many encounters himself. And he had a radio station called Pro Radio. And he invited me on to do the talk about my paranormal stuff. And I was in on the radio, and he was taking calls off air while I was talking. And a lady phoned up and she was hysterical, absolutely hysterical. And when I came off air, he said, we need to talk. He said, I've just had a call off a lady who said she lived on the same street as you and she's the same age as you, and she's just listened to you talking about your experiences and she's gone mental because she said it happened to her as well. And she told her parents about this, the shadow people and stuff, and she got battered for it. Her mum absolutely levered her. Her dad levered her. She got called a nut job. She got told she was going to get put in a nut house and stuff. And so she had a breakdown, she said. And she said, for my whole entire adult life, I have spent all that time holding that in, thinking I'm crazy, there's something wrong with me. And she said, and when you told that story, then she said the floodgates just opened because you've just described what happened to me. So then I knew it wasn't a night terror. How could it be a night terror if someone else had the exact same experience at the same time? And the outcome was different for us both. I got put in a psychiatric hospital. She got levered by her parents. but we both went quiet. None of us talked about it. And I just thought, isn't that really, really good that somebody came and acknowledged that I was telling the truth? But the part of the story I forgot to mention is when I came home from hospital, my foster brother at the time, I used to call him a geek because he was like, he didn't really speak, but he was very studious, you know, that type. And we called them geeks. And I remember coming home from hospital, and he sat there with me one day, and he said, "What did you see and what happened?" And I told him again. And he said, "Come with me." And he took me into his bedroom, and he said, "Look," and his walls were absolutely covered in drawings that he'd drawn with black ink. And he was a really good artist, and he'd drawn all these pictures and put them all on the wall. And he said, "Take a right good look at them." And I was looking at them, and he said, "Who's that?" And my heart started thumping in my chest, and I went, "Oh my God." And he went, "It's them." And he told me a different story to what I thought it was, because I was so frightened of them. And I thought, I'm insane. There's something wrong with me. These things are just evil and stuff. His experience of the same thing was completely different to mine. And what he saw, he said, were futuristic beings. And he said that they were us in the future. And he drew where they lived. And it was like a mega city, but it was really, really modern in a way you can't really explain. And all the cars, if you can call them cars, but they were more like bubble things with no wheels on, but they were all in the air. And he said, to go somewhere, to them, they only have to think it, and they just go there. And if they want to come to us here, they use portals. And he was really into it all. But it kind of did make sense. And he said, they're not trying to frighten you, they're just trying to show you something. And they're trying to show you where they come from and who they are, but you can't cope with it because you're not made the same way as me. But he absolutely loved it. Now, this is really funny as well. A few years ago, no, about 12 years ago, before I came here, I put on Facebook, does anybody want to join me and go to an ELO concert in Halifax because I've got a spare ticket? And this girl I didn't know from Adam replied, and she said, "Please, can I go?" And I went, "Yeah." And she said, "Can I have a lift, please? Because I ain't got a car." So I picked her up, and she lived in Bradford. So it was only about 10, 15 minutes away from where I lived. And I went to pick her up, and I knocked on her door, and she opened it, and she looked at me, and she went, "I know you." And I started laughing, and I went, "No, I don't know you." And she said, "Oh, you do." And I said, "Nope." She said, "Come inside my house." And she went absolutely mad. And she was an artist. And she told me all about her getting abducted, right? This is true. She got abducted by ETs when from being a child. And she drew pictures of them, like my foster brother. But she'd drawn a picture which was really, it just sent shivers down my spine, right? And she said, "Look at this." And it was a waiting room. And she said, "We're on a craft, right? We've been taken and we're on a craft." And there was a bench, two benches at either side on this corridor. And there was 3 people sat on the bench. And she said, "Look at that person on the bench there." And I looked at it and I went, "That looks like me when I was a teenager." And she went, "Yeah, because it is you." And I went, "What you on about?" She said, "It's you. I've met you. I know you." And I'm like, "Oh my God, no, you don't." She said, "I know you." And she, to this day, is adamant. She met me on a craft. And she said, "The reason why you don't have memories of all that part is because you were so terrified that you'd just black out. So you saw them come for you, but then you just pass out." She said, "I'm telling you, that's you." And honestly, and she works with another lady, and I've forgotten her name, Sasha something. and they've done radio and public speaking about these things because they said we've all met each other on this craft, and it's nuts. And this one's even more nuts. There's a guy in the States, and he's called Win Free, and he wrote a book called The Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And I've forgotten the guy's name, David Wilcock. He was trying to prove that he was the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And Win Free had, I don't know if he still does it now, he had a radio show. And he did like phone-ins. And I've forgotten the name of the ladies because this was years ago now, but there were two, I think it was Carla and was it? There were two ladies involved with him who were both like psychics. And so they did like a weekly thing where you could phone in. And they were in the States. Never met them in my life because I've never been abroad like that. They've never been here. And I phoned the station to ask a question, and I don't remember what the question was. But what I do remember is him saying, Kelly, after this call, can you stay on the line? So I did. And so we came off the air, and I was talking with him. And he said, I know you. And I went, you can't know me. And he said, you know, when you phoned me up and I answered the phone? And I went, yeah. He said, what did you feel? What was that sense in you? And I said, it's funny because you sound familiar. Like sometimes you can meet somebody for the first time and you can literally just feel a connection with them. Like, I like you. I can get on with you. I can just sit and talk to you for hours and hours. And they're like, yeah, it's like an instant connection. But when I was talking with him on the phone, he said, Kelly, I know you. I know you. And I hadn't even mentioned any of my story. He said, was you abducted when you was young? And I was like, what the hell? And I went, and he went, you don't need to answer that question actually, because I already know you was. And I said, really? And he went, yep. And he insisted that he's met me. And when I said, where did you meet me? He said, I met you on a craft. And isn't that funny? So that's two people in my future from when it happened telling me that they'd met me back then. And my foster brother, seen them and drawn them. And then the girl Paula in Bradford had drawn pictures of them and where she'd been taken and stuff. And there was a picture of me in that as well. So how nuts is that? And if you told that to somebody else, they'd say you're all crazy. You are all crazy, but too much of coincidences. But there's one year when I was 12, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw my doppelganger. I felt she wanted to steal my soul. She disappeared when I got out of bed and stood up. She got smaller as I became braver. Do you know, there is a lot of stuff there. Do you know, what was that thing I was reading about doppelgangers? I can't remember what it was, but that is a very real thing as well. And that is really interesting. It's interesting how she got smaller as you became braver. So you like took control of that. It just shows you what fear does then. So if we're fearful of things, that what can happen to us, and if we don't have the fear, how it can change everything. That's interesting that you say that about Edgar Cayce, because I read the book and yeah, Win Free sent me, I bought the book and he signed it for me. And it was a book proving that David Wilcox was Edgar Cayce. And that's what he was doing the book about. But that's interesting, like you say, that it couldn't have been him. That's really interesting. Right, that is because you know when I remember reading the book and I got convinced that it was, and because of all the coincidences and stuff that he was talking about. But yeah, that is really cool. But yeah, David Wilcox, I haven't watched him for years now because he started to come across as being a bit strange to me after a while, like, and I couldn't really connect with him. But he would say stuff like he he has a psychic connection with the intergalactic and stuff like this, and but he also I can't no, do you know what? I can't say this. I can't remember if he said he was Edgar Cayce or whether that was Winfrey convincing him it was. But I definitely remember going back to that time. It's going back years ago now, but I was really into the Winfrey stuff. Um, and he seemed to know what he was talking about, and I did believe that because the way that he put the book together was like we can prove it was him because of all these different coincidences and stuff, and claiming that some of his family members were also a reincarnation of his past family and friends and stuff like that. And there's a lot of writings on Edgar Cayce, and for anybody who's never heard of him, from what I remember, he was just an ordinary guy who had the ability to channel or go into a trance of some kind. And when he went into that, he could connect with people on a different level, like he could read like Akashic records and stuff like that. And he could heal people by telling them what was wrong with them and how to treat it and stuff. And there was a load of records made from that time that were kept secret, and there's like an association for him as well, but they're very guarded with it from what I've heard. But apparently he did, if it could have been thousands of readings for people over the years, and this is going back to beginning of 19th century or something. I can't remember when it was now, but yeah, that's interesting. Edgar Cayce's son said he's met him and verified it was not him. Yeah, 14,000. Yeah, it was a lot of people that he gave. I've been listening to some of the readings on YouTube because you can get audio books spoken on YouTube. So sometimes at bedtime I put them on. So I was listening to some other night about Edgar Cayce, his readings and what he told people. And it was really pretty accurate with a lot of stuff that he said. And he could tap into people's Akashic records, he said, and go to their higher self, if you like, or something, and he could see what was wrong. And he said some people were carrying like memories from past lives through into them, and that was coming out as illnesses and stuff like that. And he was able to tell them where it had come from so they could heal it. But it's not many people you hear like that now, though. There's a lot of people who say that psychic and stuff, but and everybody is to some degree, but he stood out because of all the stuff that he did that seemed to be accurate, and he was well respected and regarded um, because of what he did. But yeah, interesting guy anyway. But it's interesting about David Wilcox though, because I honestly thought that I used to think that he was quite gifted and that a lot, but as time's gone on, I just started to feel he got a bit more out there to a point where I couldn't resonate with him anymore. So, look, do you know what? What I say on my videos, can't I talk? I can just talk all night and all day, and I don't know why. But when I'm at work, I don't talk to no one because I'm on my own. So maybe that's why I'm like this. But yeah, I'm going to go off now because it is getting on. But I want to say thank you to everybody for watching. I'm sorry I've waffled on. I go on all the time and tell lots of stories and stuff like that. But if anybody ever wants to like come, do you know what? I'm going to try and find a way to get other people to join me on here. Because you can do those. What do they call them? Where you get the meetings together, like, and get them all online together. That'd be interesting. If I absolutely love paranormal and otherworldly things and alternative health and anything that is really out there, I enjoy it. So if anybody wants to come on and do that, well, find a way to do it. And if you want to join me and do like a live speech or a pre-recording of something and I'll put it on, just come along. It'll be great. But anyway, I just want to say thank you all once again for coming. I hope you did enjoy it, and I will see you again. And I'm going to go and get a cup of tea now. So, yeah, anybody want to join me, let me know. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. As it ended. I don't think it has ended, has it? It's saying your stream will stop immediately and you will no longer be live. And as far as I know, it is still on. I don't know.